Welcome back to Maths with Mrs. J. We've been starting to talk about logarithms. And in our previous video, our first one about logarithms, we were just going back and forth between index notation and logarithmic notation, just getting used to the idea of how they equate with one another. I also mentioned in the previous video that the main bases that we tend to work with are base 10 and base E. Now, I also mentioned that if it's base 10, you're normally actually not even going to write that base. So if there's no base written, we assume it's a base 10. Let's just think about what I've written in green here for a minute and just check that we understand that this makes sense. Log of 10a to base 10 is a. Let's think about that for a minute. What do you raise 10 to give you 10 to the a? Well, clearly you raise it to a, all right? So to work out these questions here, the best way of doing it is rewriting each of these expressions as powers of 10. And then, of course, whatever the index is will be your answer. You can, if you want to, I'll just do the first one both ways. You could call that, say, A, and of course there's really a 10 there. So we could go back to the old way of doing things and say, well, that means 10 to the A is 100. So 10 to the A is 10 squared, and we put both sides with the same base and then we equated the indices. However, we don't want to continually live in the past. We want to move on with our lives and move on to getting a bit more used to dealing with logarithms as they are. So that's not the preferred way of doing it. Let's do it the preferred way of doing it. So log of 100, it's perfectly okay to write the 10 there just to remind you. Okay, we're going to change our 100 to base 10. And then what we're really saying to ourselves is, what do we raise 10 to give us 10 squared? Well, clearly the answer is 2 because that's our index there. Let's do the next one. Again, there's no base written, so we're going to assume it is base 10. We can write that in if we want to, just to remind ourselves that's perfectly okay. All right. Cubed root of 10 means 10 to the what? Means 10 to the 1/3. And again, nice and easy. What we're really saying here is, what do I raise 10 to give me 10 to the 3rd? Well, clearly the answer is 1/3. Last one for this particular slide anyway. Square root of 10 is 10 to the half. 100 is 10 squared. What do we know from our index laws about dividing powers of the same base? We know that we subtract the indices, don't we? So we're going to get 10 to the 1/2 minus 2, which is -3 on 2. You can write the 10 in there if you want to, just to remind yourself. So again, what we're really saying is, what do we raise 10 to give us 10 to the -3 on 2? Well, the answer is clearly -3 on 2.